Google AI data centers, we pick it all up. Said they use water anywhere from 300,000 to 5 million gallons of water a day. It leaks the water system all the way around everybody's well because of that. Noise levels. You can't, it carries up, they didn't say how far, well, they say 6 tenths of a mile, it carries a lot further than that. The humming and the buzzing you can't stand. The light level, if you're on line sight of them, the lights are bad at night time, it's like you don't turn the light on, bright, grows all the time. And, your electric bill is going to go up from 75 to 100%. We see on TV for one lady's electric bill went from $150 a month up to one of them to $600 a month. I mean, we can't stand that. And so by 2030, they're going to be blackouts 100 times more than what they are now. They strain all the local resources, they lower your property value. The biggest problem is power consumption. The hazard is severe environmental and public health hazard. That pose to all neighboring communities. They deplete the water supply. They give out toxic emissions called nitrogen oxide. Nitrogen oxide gives you respiratory infections, cardiovascular diseases, and asthma. They say the cost of pollution cleanup a year. They say the cost every year is going to be something like $20 billion a year to clean up air pollution. And we don't need this in our community. We enjoy being out in the country and everything, and being, not packed on top of everybody like all these other states are. And we need a buffer zone put up around these things where if any of them do get through and able to get up here, we need a buffer zone 15 miles away from them for any building that houses people in a commercial building or anything like that. In a 15-mile buffer zone, I don't think anything in the county you can put your finger down and go 15 miles without going into a house or going into where commercial building or anything like that. And that would, if it was adopted, that would put an end to these things. They wouldn't be able to move in here and come in and crowd us out. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. All the farmers that rely on water for watering their crops, they're not going to have it, so the water's going to be gone. Our aquifers are going to be drained. They showed a place up in Atlanta where the woman opened a water faucet, and she didn't say how far away she was, but all she got was a drip out of the faucet, and it was brown and yellow looking water, nasty. Said before that she had to find drinking water. That my Ben's daughter's husband told me yesterday, he lives up in Mary. And he was telling me he went out by one of these data centers up there at running, and said there wasn't a bird in the sky. Said the noise, all the birds are gone. He said there's nothing. There's no animals around, there's birds around, none of the trees around. Everything else is moved out. They also said they're going to put one up there on the Chattahoochee River. They're going to draw all that water out of Chattahoochee River. Anybody down south, what's going to happen to these people down south in Chattahoochee River? It depends on water. If AI is going to use it all, it's going to go dry. And another thing they had said nothing about. What about the? They say 80% of that water is going to go up to steam. It's going to go up in our atmosphere. And you can follow the millions of gallons of water a day. What's that going to do to our weather? Every time a front comes through, a cloud comes over, we're going to get deluge or floods. What's going to happen in the winter time? It gets cold. And if it's real cold, drop down to 20 degrees, the clouds coming over, we're going to get snowed out, start all the water from the steam going up in the sky. The other 20%, they're going to run through filters. But they're going to make drinking water out of it. And drinking water is the only thing you can do with it is water your yard or water a garden. They don't, and it's got still got trace chemicals. And they don't know what it's going to do. But it's going to ruin our water supply and our way of life. I just hope everybody, gets behind this thing and stops this from coming into our county.
That's Ms. Dean. That's Ms. Blake. Okay, next one for the comments, we have Ashley Love. We can talk about that, sir. Good, that's fine. You can,
Just that Bitcoin.
Practice organizer that way, ladies, information in a very Good evening, my name is Ashley Kelly. Just like you, commissioners, I've served Emanuel County for more than 23 years. For the last 13 years, I've had the privilege of teaching the young citizens of Emanuel County at Plainsboro Middle School. I hold a bachelor's degree and master's degree both from Georgia Southern and a specialist degree in leadership from Valdosta State. I'm currently only 30 hours away from my doctorate. I also am a certified EMT B instructor and a first responder instructor. I have taught in a first responder class at the EOC. Because I care so deeply about Emanuel County EMS and the citizens it serves, I've come here tonight to address a serious issue. This is not simply an EMS issue. This is a public safety issue. According to Emanuel County's own information, our ambulance service responds to approximately 4,500 calls annually. Yet, our ambulance service is facing one of the great, I don't think I knew this. Yet, our ambulance service is facing one of the greatest crises it's ever encountered, staffing. To properly staff 2 24-hour ambulances, our ambulance service needs 14 full-time medics. At least 7 of them at least being paramedics. Currently, our ambulance service has 3 full-time paramedics and 5 full-time EMTs. 8 employees are attempting to do the work of 14, covering 28 shifts. As a result, numerous shifts remain vacant and are covered only because current employees, paramedics in administrative positions, and part-time personnel continue sacrificing their personal lives through overtime. This system is only surviving because the people are willing to sacrifice. But sacrifice is not a staffing plan. I understand that there have been discussions about adding a third 24-hour ambulance. While I support that addition, a third truck does not solve a staffing issue. In fact, our county already has a third truck. It's a 12-hour truck. But that truck is not ran consistently in months because we do not have the staff to support it. Ambulances do not respond to emergencies. People do. I have also heard that Emanuel County is now among the highest paying services in the area. While this may be true, comparing hourly wages simply isn't enough. You must also compare the workload. In May, Johnson County EMS responded to 160 calls. They also have 2 24-hour ambulances. During that same period, Emanuel County EMS's 2 ambulances responded to 370 calls. That's double the workload. One former full-time employee of Emanuel County left his full-time position and resigned his position down to part-time to go to Johnson County as a full-time medic. In Emanuel County, he makes 1 penny an hour more than he does in Johnson County. 1 penny for substantially more work. Commissioners, if someone asked you to do more work for 1 penny an hour, to do twice the workload for 1 penny an hour, why would you choose to work? This is not about criticizing anyone. It's about recognizing reality. Recruitment is influenced by compensation. Retention is influenced by compensation. When compensation fails to reflect direct workload and responsibility, people leave. And that is exactly what is happening. Buildings cannot solve a staffing crisis. New ambulances cannot solve staffing crisis. Without trained EMTs and paramedics, they are simply buildings and vehicles. Tonight, I ask you to recognize that EMS is not just simply another department. It is a lifeline. A heart attack does not wait. A stroke does not wait. A child struggling to breathe does not wait. The question is simple. Are we doing enough to recruit and retain the highly trained professionals our citizens depend on during their worst moments? One day, the person waiting for an ambulance may be your spouse, your parent, your child, or even your grandchild. When that day comes, I know you will want the most experienced and best trained professionals available to respond. Those professionals are not asking for special treatment. They are asking to be compensated. They're asking for compensation that reflects their workload and reflects the responsibility that they carry on their shoulders. One more second. On behalf of this community, commissioners, ambulances do not save lives. Buildings do not save lives. Equipment does not save lives. People save lives. The Emanuel County citizens deserve an ambulance service that is fully staffed to run 3 24-hour trucks. Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Ms. Jessie Meadows, talking about chapter.
Good evening, my name is Jessie Meadows, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the concerned landowners and residents throughout Emanuel County regarding the proposed Georgia Hatch Wadley transmission line and the broader issue of data center development and infrastructure required to support it. This project is still in the planning stages, which means public involvement can still make a difference. Over the past several weeks, residents have begun receiving information indicating that properties in and around Emanuel County may be affected. We've already confirmed that at least one landowner on Pleasant Road has received a map showing the proposed route cutting right through her property that has existed in her family for generations. Many people still do not know whether they are affected. Others have questions but do not know where to turn for answers. For many families, this is not simply a piece of land on a map. This is a farm that has been in the family for generations. It's timberland, hunting land, and home sites for children and grandchildren were raised. It is family history, it is family heritage. Some of these properties have been cared for by the same families for decades. Long before any of us were here, these previous generations worked this land, paid exuberant taxes on this land, raised families on this land, and passed it to those who came after them. That's why this issue matters so deeply to so many people. Tonight, I am not asking this commission to stop this project. I'm asking this commission to represent the citizens of Emanuel County while this process is still ongoing. I have provided a copy of the citizens' request summary to each member of the commission to respectfully ask that it be entered into the public record. I've also provided a supporting document titled Supporting Information and Authority for Requested Actions, which explains that these requests in greater detail, and also that these are traditional functions of local government and are well within the authority should our commission choose to act. I want to be very clear about something. Every request being made tonight is within the authority of this commission. I'm not asking you to stop the project or overrule Georgia Power or even the Georgia Public Service Commission. I'm asking you to use the authority that you already possess as the elected governing body of Emanuel County to represent and protect the citizens of this county. That responsibility is not only part of your authority, it's part of the trust that the people of Emanuel County placed in you when they elected you to serve. The question before us tonight is not whether you have the authority to act. You do. The question before us is whether you're willing to use that authority to act on behalf of the citizens you were elected to represent. Many residents understand that this proposed transmission line is being constructed to support future growth in electrical demand associated with major industrial development, including anticipated data center development in our region. That's why I requested to speak tonight on the topic of data centers and the infrastructure being built to support their development. Data centers are becoming some of the largest consumers of electricity in the country. Across Georgia, communities are increasingly being asked to accommodate the infrastructure necessary to support them, including these transmission lines, substations, and other utility expansions. Whether you support data centers or you oppose them is not the question in the world tonight. The question is whether the citizens whose homes, farms, timberland, and property will be affected deserve to know what is being proposed before these decisions are permanent. The question is whether local citizens deserve transparency before infrastructure is built through their communities in support of developments that may not even be located in Emanuel County, as this one is located in Watley, but we are losing people in Emanuel County are losing their property for it. The question is whether the people who bear these impacts deserve a meaningful voice in this process, and I believe they do. Because meaningful public participation is not an obstacle to progress, it's part of responsible government. We're not here after the decision has been made. We're here while these decisions are still being made. If citizen input is going to matter, it must happen now. If the routes are still being evaluated, now is the time for citizens to be heard, alternatives to be examined, and questions to be answered. Once these decisions are finalized, opportunities for meaningful public involvement become far more limited. The requests being submitted tonight are not only about this transmission line, they're about the future of Emanuel County. They're about ensuring that citizens are informed before these major decisions are made, and that family land, agricultural land, timber, and rural communities are considered before infrastructure is submitted and development patterns are established. They're also about ensuring that a future data center development is considered in or around Emanuel County. Citizens have a voice before those decisions are made, rather than after. That is why I respectfully ask this commission to review the citizen request summary being submitted tonight, review the accompanying supporting information and authority, and place these items on a future agenda for discussion and consideration. Again, I'm not asking for you to stop the project. I'm asking whether this commission is willing to use the authority already possesses to represent the people who elected it. The people of Emanuel County don't want special treatment. They just want information, transparency, and a voice before this becomes permanent. And they're asking that you, the elected officials, stand with us while these decisions are being made. For anyone who would like to, after the meeting, we're going to stay and we're going to try to share the information that we know about this transmission line for those who have been affected. If you'd like to meet us after the meeting. Thank you.
3 minutes doesn't get a response. Talk about that. Right.
I need to remember that term, exuberant taxes, so, my name is Todd Free, and I'm glad to be with you today. I live on a farm in northern Emanuel County, and it's been in our family for over 100 years. It's mainly a tree farm, but with a little row cropping thrown in. I've always been so proud of the fact that Emanuel County celebrates the forest industry. Think about this industry in the county, and you know, it's the biggest industry in the county. And Georgia is #1 in forestry in the state, in the nation, with more than 22 million forested acres being privately owned. And as you know, you've all experienced the hurricane. Hurricane came through, knocked stuff down, you had to fix it, and then here came the closing of 3 pulp mills and 2 sawmills, leaving property owners with no place to market their timber. We had some help from the state to clean that up. But timber is a long-term investment, and starting over can take 20 years. So you can start working on things as you go, plan everything, get it planned. In the meantime, you've got to pay taxes for 20 years before you have any income that comes. More than likely, I won't be here to see some of the stuff that's torn down my property. So how can timber growers justify reinvesting in it? Okay, with that being said, the tax assessments. When I opened my assessment and saw that the value of my property had doubled, I nearly fell out. I was really in shock. The first thing that went through my mind was, oh no, that means the taxes are gonna double. That double taxes on my property. And when I thought about that, how could they do that when I've got trees down and gone? And not only that, but on the assessment, there was no little estimate at the bottom like they usually do. This year the tax will be about this much. So that kind of seemed like a red flag. I was thinking that, well, they were scared to put it on there. So at the tax assessor's office the next day, I was filled with questions like, but how can my land be worth twice as much now with all these damages? I was told, well, we don't value the timber, we value the property. Okay, maybe you don't, but I do. It's very important to me. So what I found out was, and was told, was that the assessments are based on comps. So if someone in the county sells a piece of property and they want to subdivide it, a real estate developer comes along and he puts an exuberant price on it, I would say that again. And so therefore, they're gonna price my farmland taxes higher. But I don't wanna do that with my farm. I wanna grow trees. I want my farmland to be there for another generation and another one if possible. So it doesn't seem right to do that. I might be needing to follow this on the state level. I wanted also to know who assessed the property. Did they even drive by and see? Well, I showed them some pictures of it, trees down and everything else. No, they just work from their computers and they see the comps in the area. They don't know the damage that people have had on their property, but they're gonna have you pay, the value goes twice. But now, I will say this, my commissioner, Jim Sherrod, was very kind and he was very reassuring to me, because I had a long conversation with him. And he told me that the tax rate would be capped at 2.76, I know that backwards. But anyway, that's what you told me. It's all. Anyway, I was wondering what kind of bill that I'll get next year when the millage rate goes up. And I understand we're getting a portion of that 1% of the 2% to help alleviate the taxes, okay? Maybe this year. What about next year? We're gonna have to pass another sales tax to help the property owners. The property owners are pulling the weight in this country and this county, I'm sorry. So how can our young farmers or the next generation tree farmers afford to live in Emanuel County? That's my point.
Yes, ma'am.
We had a big meeting this weekend, young farmers, I'm sure you've seen a lot about that, great kids, and they wanna be farmers one day. How are they gonna do that? How are they gonna pay taxes when the value is elevated so much? So anyway, and the timber and everything else, and then you have, I'll touch on this, and I'm not supposed to, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Then you have data centers that are offering promises and big money to convert prime farmland and timberland to concrete, noise, and pollution of water resources. Now, that didn't get back. If that's gone, you can't restore that land to farmland again. We've got to value our farmland and our water, and I'm done.
Okay, up next we have Mr. Frank Wimberly. Like to talk about that, sir.
I don't follow her.
Yeah.
I'll take them slow. I'm Frank Wimberly. I'm a lifelong resident of Emanuel County. My family's been here for approximately 100 years, and I know so many of you here, and probably no longer than any of your family, which is good to say about this county, because it shows this county means something to us like it did all of our ancestors and all who came before us. Last time I was here last month, and I talked a little bit about some abuses that have been taking place at data centers across not just Georgia, but across the country. Lake Tahoe residents in California are going to be facing blackouts next year because their power companies will no longer have access to power, because that divided power is diverting it to data centers. They told the small utility, the EMCs, that sorry, you're going to have to find your power somewhere else. Place up in Wisconsin, They gave all these tax subsidies, all these incentives to help these, to lure these data centers in. Ones the data centers paid up front for all the infrastructure updates. They paid up front for the infrastructure updates, but the county's gonna pay them back at 7% interest. That don't sound like a good deal to me. It doesn't sound like a good deal to these folks either. But they're a lot smarter than we are. They're a lot more cunning than we are. Just asking. So, a lot of folks talking property taxes. Right now it's a hot button issue. I don't want to be in these fellows' position when it comes to that. I will say, when the data centers come, when they're selling points, hey, we're going to make the county so much money, y'all won't have to pay property taxes anymore. But y'all know as well as I do, you don't get something for nothing. Eminent domain. You go to Coweta County up around Noonan. George Powers implemented eminent domain on 30 houses in a single neighborhood. That's affecting over 80 households in that neighborhood where they're taking some part of the property. They got a 400-foot easement. They said they need 200 more feet of easement. Taking properties because they got to support the local data center. How many of y'all did your power bill lately? Do we think George Powers is our friend? Look at your power bill and take 25% off of that. That's 25%. That 25% of your power bill is not what you're actually using. It's for the grid to expand. They're expanding the grid for who? Data centers. But the only people who are carrying that cost are residential and commercial users, non-industrial users. Now all that stuff's out of their hands. But I think we can say whether or not we want data centers to come in or not. I think we can appear very unfriendly to the data centers. They're not here for a man county. They're not here to uplift this county like we all, day to day, try to uplift this county. They're here to squeeze every last drop out of it. And all of us, and all of our ancestors that came before us, all y'all familiar faces, they're coming for all of it. Luckily for us, they ain't here yet. I hear all the time about zoning. And nobody wants to be told what they can do with their property. I'm all for it. 1,000% I agree philosophically with that. But we have to be practical. If we think zoning is an issue, if we don't like zoning, how do we feel about eminent domain? If the data centers are allowed to come in, Georgia Power is going to use, we don't even have one now, and they're about to implement eminent domain, potentially. Imagine if they're here. I got just a minute, so I don't want to go over time. I'm going to submit to the board, or to the chairman, or I'm sorry, to the commissioners, excuse me. I'm going to submit to the commissioners here in just a second. So in the last 30 days, St. Charles, Missouri, a town of about 70,000 people, much bigger than Swainsboro, much bigger than Manor County, has done a data center ban. And it lays out line for line how they can avoid data centers. And basically, they just have to classify them a certain way to keep them out. We can do that. We can put just restrictions in place that are just so uninviting that none of them want to come here. But at the end of the day, we have to do something. We have to be proactive. We cannot be reactive. Last thing, I'm sorry. Commissioners, I think you're here for a reason. I think you're at a watershed moment in this county. I think this might be one of the biggest decisions in the history of this county, what we're going to do in this next phase of this county. And for whatever reason, y'all have been put in these chairs for this moment. It is a watershed moment. It's a big deal. I think the question is, are you going to be men of this moment, or are you going to be men for this moment? It's a time for choosing. Thank you.
we have the discussion and action on the third EMS truck. Secretary, elaborate.
Again, so just for the room, we operate our EMS a little differently than some communities in that it is run and managed by the hospital authority, which is part of the County Board of Commissioners. There are some positives to that, based on some dealing circumstances with upper payment limits and things like that. Make it good for us, but it does create some unique challenges for EMS in that, they're working with the hospital at times, and also a secondary approval from the Board of Commissioners, so it does create some bureaucracy there. We recognize that challenge. And so, that's kind of what this is here. We've been working with leadership at the hospital for several months now to discuss the challenges that we've had with EMS. As Ashley mentioned, there's really nothing she said that was wrong, in her statements. And so it is a huge challenge for us. The challenge is probably somewhat bigger to some degree in that this is not just a challenge unique to Emanuel, even though I don't know that some have as severe the challenges we have right now with personnel. We're just not turning out paramedics at the same rate that they used to. The state is not
right, that's not right.
We used to have a paramedic program right here in Manning County. We no longer have a paramedic program right here in Manning County that was a feeder for our hospital and EMS for a long time. So that is a challenge we have. Salaries is a challenge. Workload, though, is probably our biggest challenge. And that's what we're addressing tonight. We've had a third ambulance on for a little while now, but it's been a 12-hour truck. When we created that 12-hour truck, there were staff positions on that were interested in moving into that 12-hour position. That is no longer the case. Filling that truck has been difficult. There are not people that really want to work 412s or whatever that is. I think that one of the benefits and advantages that some see is the 2 24-hour shifts a week. You're not having to work overtime. So we feel like it's easier to staff that truck on a 24-hour basis. And at the end of the day, 24-hour truck, adding the third truck is the goal to reduce call volume. That's the only way to reduce call volume. Now, can you fill it immediately? Will it take some time to get people back to understanding you're not gonna have the same call volume that you once had? It will take some time to fill that truck, which is why we're looking at some other measures to try to retain staff and recruit additional staff. But we are recruiting, back and forth for years. We trade employees in EMS. Now, Maine County's always had a good core group of people. We've lost several of those recently. And so, we're trying to get back to full staff. And so, we're presenting a decision the hospital has already voted on. This board just has to ratify it, and that's the addition of the third truck.
Hey, let's do about the third truck we got.
No, it's a microphone, so people back from here,
We have, well, I hear a motion to adopt the third truck.
Motion to approve the third truck.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second? And a second, any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Motion carried. Next up, we have the, action on data center, cryptocurrency mining moratorium. Secretary.
Mr. Richards not here tonight. It's a conflict with the meeting change for him, and he serves as, he serves as judge of a few different courts throughout the county, so it's just a conflict. So he drafted the moratorium at request of the board. Ultimately, this is a big issue. I think that everybody on this board is in agreement that there's still a lot of research that this board needs to do, more so as it relates how to stop. Not so is it good, is it bad? That's not been the conversation. The conversation is, how do we stop? We've been in a community for ever that you can do what you want on your property. And now we are being asked, and honestly, throughout the year, we get asked periodically, can I stop my neighbor from doing this? But, it's never risen don't have a means currently in place to stop something like this from coming. We would have very little to no say over that. The only thing we do in our government, that is somewhat restricting is the issuance of building permits for projects like this, but as long as they meet all of the requirements of that permit, we issue the permit. So moratoriums ultimately have to be tied to something that you already have in your process, and that is what we have in our process. This is not a zoning moratorium. We don't have zoning. This would be a moratorium on the issuance of building permits. That's all we have the legal authority to do currently, which is still arguably good enough. We would not issue a permit, so they all arguably would not be allowed to start construction on a project. Reading into this resolution, you all had time to see it. It does ultimately say that this moratorium will be in place for 12 months. That 12-month period is specifically set aside for the purpose of this board to try to gain the necessary knowledge that they need, to try to get an understanding from the public of their wishes and desires for this community, probably mostly tied to, do you want zoning in this community? And so the question is, do you want zoning? If zoning means we can potentially stop that and other bad developments. But that also comes with a ton of other checks and balances and asking the government what you can do with your property. This has been a house forever, but now I want to sell t-shirts out of my house. I want to have it embroidered. That could create problems for a business like that. If residents in that neighborhood say, no, we don't want a commercial business operating out of our neighborhood, government, please tell them they can't do that. So, pros and cons. You can stop bad development. Cons. You have to ask what you can do on your property. Lots of people, Swainsboro has zoning. So this is not new, completely new to our county. The municipalities have zoning in place. So, if you live in the municipality, you may already be familiar with the process. That's just to provide a little bit of clarity on what, if you're not familiar with it at all. So, Swainsboro has it. Again, moratoriums presented for you tonight for consideration. This really just buys you time. 12 months. And I would say this, we do have two cryptocurrency mines that have created some challenges for the community. But we've never had any conversations with a data center. We've not been noted of any phishing, data centers looking, speculating, and arguably something of that size we wouldn't know necessarily. I think they're good at what they do as far as trying to scope out where they're coming. But to that point, none have ever come to us and mentioned or discussed the possibility of locating here, which at some point, if they were going to locate here, they would do, because they're probably going to ask for some type of pathway.
I'm sorry, guy, but the two that are here just released an article saying they're converting to data centers. It's on their website for Clean Spark.
Technically, no.
This moratorium would also
That's right.
include expansion
Just
of
said that.
existing facilities. The moratorium would also include expansion, so any expansions of existing facilities, these being crypto mines, would require, they would not be eligible for building permits for additional expansion purposes under this moratorium.
We talked about this, for the last 6 or 8 months, maybe even a year, and as far as zoning goes, those questions over the last 6 or 7 years, and that has been the talk, nobody did want zoning, but when, as Frank said, when it comes to something like this, you really got to second guess it. Now, I'm not saying whether we should have zoning or not, but, and we're gonna have some public hearings on this subject to see if that's what the folks want. But in the meantime, we got to have something with a little bit of teeth in it. Frank, I haven't had a chance to read George yet, but I will. But to stop some of that expansion this year, I know it says 12 months, but it also gives clause in here to extend it. And that was one of the things I wanted to make sure was in there too. We talked one-on-one it means something to everybody. And, before we can allow something like this happen, everybody can tell you what's bad about a data center. Do your own research. Jesse's done a lot of it, Jay, you know, Frank's done a lot. But if we don't have something with a little bit of teeth to pump the brakes on this kind of things to stop it, until we get some sort of ordinances to make it hard for them to come in here, if that's what everybody wants, or zoning, to give you some teeth to stop some of this from happening, then it very well could happen. I'm not foolish enough to think that they look at Emanuel County, they look at counties around the state, and they see how big it is, you know, how rural it is. And then they look and they say, well, this county don't have something. Well, we might be just right on in there, you know? So, the last meeting I was getting at, we asked, the Perry and Richmond, Needham County Attorney to give us a moratorium that we could look at. And if it had enough teeth in it, we could adopt to stop some of this from happening until we get more feedback from everybody. By feedback, I mean, but we've got one that's tentatively scheduled for July. Anyway, we wanna have a couple of hearings on that. We also talked about even putting some questions on the November ballot. People go to vote, put some questions on there, maybe 2 or 3 simple questions, and then a follow-up question. And by question, I mean, you answer this yes or no, type stuff. And, so we get more feedback on that. With this moratorium, you can't just use it to say we're gonna stop that. You use it so you can progress, and you have to progress in doing something to give this any teeth. You have to have public hearings and whatnot, you have to, you know, put questions on about it. You want that information to see, as the secretary said about zoning, it could stop the data center. Or good zoning might pick it apart, but you gotta have something. And that's what we want input, whether 5 people vote on zoning, or the whole county votes on zoning. Doesn't matter to me, we want what y'all on this,
Well, you need to go and study what's happening in Epping County.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's a mess.
It is, I mean, there's stories all over the place about it. So, with that being said, we've got a purchase moratorium here. I need someone to entertain a motion to adopt this moratorium. I'll make a motion.
I second.
We have a motion and a second, real quick, any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries unanimous. Very good, thank you. All right, next we have, deep connection project approval, that we have 2 bids on that, guys, is that correct?
Yes, sir, we might receive some others. I would ask if y'all are to approve this tonight, we consider doing the price not to exceed, because we have asked for 2 other contractors to give us a price. But for sake of time, we would like to not have to wait until next month to start some of these patches, because some of these are on major roadways that particular patches are settling, rock and all put in there, get the beat out and settle, so we're gonna go ahead and get asphalt patch in. So a couple times a year, we get a price from some private contractors that do deep patches for us. This is almost exclusively for asphalt and surface treatment roads that we've had to cut out pipes on and replace, and then ultimately we try to maybe those for 3 or 4 months, get them along until we get enough roads to make it worth these contractors' while to come in and do patches for us on these particular crossings, pipe crossings. And so honestly, the two people who have done this work for us in the past have both submitted bids. But as y'all know, we've got so much road work going on in the county right now. A few of these other contractors are considering giving us a price. So we had Mr. Roddy Hooks gave us a price of $156,120 to do the patches listed. And then we had TK Gigs Contracting give us a price of $153,505. So those prices are very close. I know that in this Robbins was pretty much a hard bid. He gave us, TKB kind of gave us a maximum price. He felt like when he got in here and started some of the work, he could reduce some of the scope a little bit. He was giving us a maximum scope price, just because sometimes you don't know what you're getting into on that. But he's always worked with us to get that price down. So of the two here, both have done good work for us in the past. Currently, T and K Hicks are the bids. If that is what you choose to do, again, going with either of these, that you give us a potentially a price not to exceed, and give us in the Public Works Department the authority to go with a lower bid. Those guys are able to provide us a lower price. And particularly looking for one from Scrubs, who's doing a ton of paving for us right now, so.
So, the motion needs to be in the form of, price of C, the low bid, correct?
Correct, and these are just word of mouth bids on these types of projects, not sealed bid process.
So I hear a motion to move forward with the, dispatching truck. Motion to second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, show of hands. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 13, there's the, Board of Health appointments. We have Dr. Stephen McCray and Nancy Morgan. I think we can do these both in one motion. Do I hear a motion to, approve? A motion, we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Another big topic for a lot of folks is the next action that we have to look at on, item 14. It has been a long time coming. I'll let the secretary get into some of the details. The project got approved by the voters, as far as, SPOS monies for capital projects back in 20, what was it, 2, 4, 3, somewhere in there. Anyway, the last SPOS that we voted on, that was part of capital improvement, which was, going to tell the previous board, voted to move forward with extending this long to this point. So, I'll give the financial details on it, if I know where we're at, we can take action.
So just real quick, 10 years ago, we started discussing facilities in this county. We've had several boards of commissioners since. Through the years, one of the biggest challenges was the condition of all of our facilities. Back then, we had EMS operating out of the basement that flooded every time it rained. You had, Mitchell building was in horrible shape. We had major issues there, major annual costs and repairs. The Coleman Hotel, we had mold issues, mildew issues, asbestos issues. It was still very much looked like an old hotel. District attorney was on the second floor. They operated out of old hotel rooms. We housed half a dozen offices in that space. We had Mitchell Building House, tax assessors elections, so on and so forth. Commission through those years developed a plan, ultimately building an emergency operations center to get 911 out. Decision was made after doing cost estimates and renovation estimates to forego the Mitchell building, sell that building, move into the new admin building. Again, voted on by the citizens. That building was funded, 2/3 of that building funded grants, the other third of that was funded with SPOS. And then lastly, the last phase of that was the Coleman Hotel project, again voted as a 1 penny sales tax. Sales tax is funding this. At 1 penny can only fund capital projects, facilities, vehicles, equipment, that type of thing. So that's the only thing you can use this penny for. Citizens voted on that. We have that money, through that commission issued bonds. And so that bond money's been sitting there for a few years. Tons of questions. Why is that taking so long? Why is it taking so long? First off, we went through a phase 1, did a demo. Architect felt like that would be best for the design process on this building. It exists, older building, existing structure, so that they could design to what was there, what was behind the walls, all where the columns were, all of those things. And that process has happened, architects went to work, and it's just taken an extremely long time. Truthfully, we're very disappointed with the length of time that it's taken to get that project designed. But we are here, that's behind us now, that project has been bid out. We started with about a $7.3 million budget on that project. That project was designed out, that project came in much higher than that initially, but there was some scope things put into that project that should not have been there. We negotiated that down so that we can do the entire building. We have been the house for the district attorney's office for our region forever. We have covered all the costs of housing the district attorney's office. We've paid all the repair bills, all the light bills, all the water bills, all of these things. Over the last several weeks, I've been able to negotiate with all of the counties in our district. They're ultimately going to cover the cost of constructing the fourth floor of this building. If the board chooses to move forward, so the county would not be responsible for that. So we back the regions covering the cost of the district attorney's office. Also, the added scope to redo the parking lot. This project is at 8,839 minus the $1 million for the fourth floor, less the parking lot, and it puts us right on budget for this project, which is what we projected probably 5 years ago. So it's honestly amazing that we've been able to even get it to that level, considering the cost of construction, inflation, wage inflation, tied to most of those bid packages. But so that's where this project is. It's within budget, and presenting that to commissioners for consideration.
I'd like to add to that too, when this project is approved, that gets started, when it's completed, it'll be, that's going to be used from the bottom floor to the top floor. The pricing for something new to have that same amount of space is way more than what we're spending now. So, and partly it's our county, it sits in our county seat, right there, the main, that, you know, it's whole bill, that is gonna be basically right here, for less cost than it would be to have or build another building to put all those offices in. I think that's important to know too. So, we all gonna make this motion, this is huge, pretty big. So I need a motion.
I make a motion, because I was
We have a motion, we have a second. Second. And a second, any further discussion? All in favor, go ahead. Motion carries today. We can start working on it.
And so if it's voted tonight, you would see that starting in the next 30 days.
Last thing on the agenda, recreation department, parking lot project approval. Got it.
So we got the $6.4 million in grants to redo the recreation department. Lots of work has been happening out there over the last 6 months. Softball complex is pretty much complete. Gym is very close to complete. The splash pad and pool area is very close to complete. I think they were shooting for a mid-August turnover. They stayed, do a really good job with their scheduling and they pretty much stayed true to that most of the project. That parking lot was in need of a major repair prior to this work, and it was something we were already looking at and considering to do in 2027. There was dozens and dozens of concrete patches, dozens and dozens of base failures. I think everybody on this board knows that, you know, that where that was constructed and what used to be out there was always base challenges out there. So from the beginning of that parking lot being there was always settling at that parking lot, major issues and tons of repairs. So we knew that parking lot was going to have to be replaced and upgraded, and even since the construction, you put heavy equipment on that and it just turned it to roll. Running just dump trucks with dirt in it across the backside of that parking lot turned it to roll. So we bumped that scope up a little bit. I think originally we were looking at about a $1.5 million project. We've had a design, we've added some scope, we've had some, if you haven't been to the rec department in the last few years, one I recommend going. I think they do an outstanding job out there. We have group of people, but that place is busting at the seams with kids and participation. It is nuts the amount of growth we've had in our programming. To that, it creates a ton of challenges for traffic, so we're trying to improve that a little bit by adding an additional lane coming in and out of the park, so that is in this scope. There's a little bit of parking lot widening on one end, just so we can clean up some of the roads and add a few extra parking spots on one side. So all of that was designed for the scope on this project, but also if you follow parking lot project site work, it is always extremely expensive, and so this is a very expensive price, but it's within, actually under the budget that we had prepared and what we were ultimately gonna fund this project with. So we have some local resource funds set aside for capital projects, and I think if this board were to move forward, I think that was y'all's intention, to use that local resource funds that we've set aside on some reimbursements we've received, and things like that. So low bid on this particular project, we have from Stroh's Company, who's actually doing an FDR project for us right now on Mount Shady Church Road. This parking lot's in bad enough shape, and the base for this, the dirt is poor, it's gumbo clay, the stuff that's under that's not great. It requires a full depth reclamation to that parking lot. So that whole parking lot gets ground up, before the cement gets pumped in, creates a strong base, and you come over the top of that with asphalt, and you have an amazing parking lot for the next couple of decades. So, low bid, $1,091,725, and again, we were originally looking at 1.4, 1.5. So we were able to get everything we wanted, the ad alternates, all of those things were under the budget we had set aside to do that parking lot, that facility.
Do I have a motion to move forward with the parking lot at the rec park? Have a motion, second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, show of hands. Motion carries unanimous. We have exhausted all the agenda items, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Great. All in favor, show of hands. Motion is adjourned. Thank you all for listening.